Nigeria is a country with three tiers of government: the federal, known as the central, the state, and the local government. There are 774 local government areas and each headed by the local government chairman. The local government is described as that closest to the grassroots as well as the link to the people. Over the years, arguments have been that local government authorities have not made much impact on rural communities, and the dividends of democracy as much opportunities meant for the rural communities are denied. Some have argued that this is due to the usurping of financial autonomy of these council areas by the state governments. This is in spite of the federal government's policy granting local government financial autonomy, giving them sole access to their funds. This has made it impossible for most of these local government areas to function effectively. How best can governance at the rural areas be felt by the people? How can the local government be truly impactful? These are some of the questions guests already seated will be providing answers to shortly.
All right, many thanks, Oyemi Ajayi, for that backgrounder. We have 4 guests with us this morning, and they are all regular guests on Good Morning Nigeria. First, let's welcome the former Deputy Governor of Abia State, Dr. Chris Akumas. Your Excellency, delighted to have you with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right, also here with us in the studios is a security risk management expert, Dr. Kabir Adamu. Dr. Adamu, delighted to have you this morning.
Good morning.
Okay.
And also joining us in our Kaduna studio is the former Commissioner for Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs and now Commissioner for Sports Development, Kaduna State. He is also a Professor of Political Science. Kabir Umato is a popular name we know. You're welcome, sir.
Very much. Good morning.
Very much. And the joining us from Benin studio is a two-time chairman of Uhun Ward, a local government area in Edo State, and pioneer chairman of Edo State chapter of the Association of Local Governments of Nigeria, that is Algon, Dr. Isaiah Osifo. Thank you for making out time for us today.
Good morning.
All right, gentlemen, delighted to have you with us. You are all familiar with expressions that we have heard in recent years, namely so-called ungoverned spaces. You hear that kidnappers are in the bush or in the forest. We also get to hear that bandits launch their raids from the forest. This forest, of course, belong to rural communities. And some experts have also drawn attention to a very serious phenomenon these days, which is rural-urban drift and the growth of informal settlements or shanties. Those, of course, who live in the Federal Capital Territory have seen the growth of shanties in and around the Abuja city itself, those who are in Lagos and indeed other urban areas, which has given rise to the question as to why there appears to be the poor governance of our rural communities. Let's get the first salvo from Dr. Chris Akumas. What's happening?
Thank you very much, Councillor. It's a big problem, big challenge. We are talking about what we see at the effects, but we seem to forget that something gave rise to the situation. The rural communities or rural areas, as we know it, is actually the base for all that we do. And if you take it from the point of looking at local government governance and councils, that is where is the nucleus of everything. Talk about agriculture, talk about education, talk about health, talk about human capital development, and then the issue of social amenities and infrastructure development. Why did I say it's the root of the problem? We forgot to continue with the strengthening of that tier of governance. And we even went further as we continued to tinker and amend our constitutions to remove the handlers of our rural communities, the traditional institutions and rulers. There are administrative systems at that level. And so we seem to have not given that support for them to operate effectively. Everybody talks about the money that goes and how it goes, when in actual fact, a local government fund goes more to the payment of teachers' salaries, teachers that may not even be the kind of teachers or that should have been, and then those that are much more overbloated, and that places a burden. And most times I say to myself, any local government, any state, any government that engages unqualified or under trained, half-baked professional civil servants, whatever, at that point, it's actually doing more harm to the system, not just the localities, to the whole system. So the local administration have been like, okay, we have somebody that answers local government chairman. Time they were that local government administration was really effective and good to the people, gave confidence. But these days, the local government chairman is actually there with the councillors to, make the people feel that sense of belonging, see things happening. But these days, what we see are local government areas, except for few, that all they do is come at the end of the month, whatever trickles down from the Abuja, allocation, they just appropriate it and go home. So the governance space is open in the sense that nobody is actually touching directly. Then the state comes with, few development programs and social amenities, maybe electricity, rural electrification, some roads and all that. Then some local governments will once or twice in a year just do some road grading of feeder roads within, and nobody talks about what happens with. So effectively, that point where we are supposed to capture the majority of our people in all the areas and aspects have been left bare, and focus is on, and then even the local government chairman and everybody and the states are looking at what is it that I'll do now so that people will be clapping for me. Nobody is actually thinking of what we do that can sustain the system. Prioritization, I have always said, has been the bane of our, governance. And especially at the local government level, it's like you just do what you want. So when nature abhors vacuum, when you have such vacuum, when people don't feel that there is an authority that they can rely upon, they will create their own system. It could be good, it could be bad. And unfortunately for us, what we have is more of bad than good.
Well, many thanks, Dr. Chris. At least the insight has been made and then put straight. Dr. Kabir Adamu, security may be one of the prompts for this topic because, when we look at the security situation, most of these bandits, robbery, kidnappings, and whatever took place in the rural communities. And even this morning when I was just coming over to this place on BBC, I had, got some, startling news, if I may say, perplexing news, really, from a woman that was talking about the whereabouts of her husband, her children, and in far northwest. who is really governing these areas? When we look at this situation from the background of security, whenever there is a problem like this, the local government chairman in that story said, of course, they are doing everything possible after the whole town has been ransacked, and then nobody's there. Then the security men jumped in. But you can't hear much more than that always. It's after it has happened that you hear authorities coming in. Who is governing that place?
Not to repeat what my elder here has mentioned, but I align with him totally. The 3 tiers of government are clarified. If theoretically, the local government chairman should have administrative control over his location, theoretically. But the reality of where we are today has been painted by him clearly. Now, to give context to the example you gave, this is a location in Maradung in Zamfara State that, according to the current report we have, was attacked at 9 a.m. And the attack continued from that 9 a.m. till 1 p.m. And according to the report, 30 people were slaughtered. They were not shot, they were slaughtered. Now, the bestiality of that attack, the fact that these bandits came in broad daylight on a market day and then used whatever it was to slaughter the people between the hours of 9 and 1 without adequate response, I think paints a clear situation of the lack of governance that was painted earlier on at the local government level. And we can give a lot of explanation, reasons behind it, but I want to capture one significant point, which is our constitution. Like, security is in the exclusive list. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, there are reasons, historical reasons, why we have that. But unfortunately, the reality, the demands of today makes that situation almost untenable, because people live in those locations and the security agencies are stretched. Now, it would be very unfair not to mention that security vote, as an example, is given to the state government. And I know that trickled down somehow to the local government chairman. And I know that there are various other levels of support given by both the state government and the federal government to the security institutions for them to exercise security at that level. But the reality is, because there is no accountability, what kind of monitoring and evaluation mechanisms do we have in place? In my village, as an example, in Sokoto in Ndugundaji, if I go there today and I'm in an emergency situation and I call any of the security agencies, how many of them will I be able to rally around? Probably less than 10. When you have bandits in sometimes between 100 to 500 coming to attack locations. So in direct answer to your question, yes, the responsibility is on the chairman, theoretically. But what of the authority? Unfortunately, the authority is not with him. The authority for security lies in Abuja. Even though somehow, and that's the lacuna in the constitution, there is some money given to the state government to exercise some level of control. There are several ramifications of this point I made. You talked about the forest reserves. As far as I know, constitutionally, those forest reserves belong to the state. Authority for them belongs to the state. However, the national parks authority is at the federal level. And we know there are pockets of national parks here and there across the country. But the majority of the challenge we're having, a lot of them are in this forest reserve. So where you have a situation where the Constitution, for instance, gives exclusive authority for security, as it were, to the federal government, but then you now have this challenge, then I guess the way forward is collaboration, better collaboration between these various levels of government at the federal, the state, and at the local level. It's not as easy as I'm making it sound. I know President Buhari's administration has made almost a priority to especially the financial autonomy. But then what are the other aspects? The capacity for this local government chairman to exercise the governance responsibility on them. It's almost lacking, frankly. So it's a huge problem, and I'm really, really happy that NTA as an organization is focusing on this. If we're going to get it right, those are issues that need to be improved upon. The current focus on the federal level, we need to reduce that significantly, so that at both the state and the local government level. I mean, we can look at models across the world. democracies that are advanced, some of which we are copying from. How do they exercise theirs? Are they doing it the way we're doing ours? We can't continue in this manner and hope to have a change. If we're going to have a change, these are issues that I think we need to focus on, emphasize these aspects so that humanity, or governance as it were, which is the focus of our discussion, can be improved at that level that has been described as the nucleus of our existence in Nigeria.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Adamu. Let's go over to our Kaduna Network Center, where we earlier introduced Professor Kabir Mato, who at some point was Commissioner for Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs in Kaduna State. Of course, is now Commissioner in charge of social sports development. Professor Kabir Mato, look, there's probably no doubt that governance and authority in rural Nigeria have broken down. What has happened and how can it be fixed?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. I think we need to trace this, from a historical perspective. It is not, uncommon to say that the attention that previous governments in this country have given to rural development has been very lacking. That's one area. Secondly, also, and very fundamentally, is the apparent unwillingness on the part of the Nigerian elites, especially that find themselves in privileged positions, to appreciate the fact that injustice to one is injustice to all. This, in my view, has led severally to condemnation and failure on the part of successive states' administration to be able to effectively, especially the federal state, implement meaningful policies that will see, to the evolution of vibrant rural Nigeria, where education facilities such as electricity, pipe-borne water, roads, etc., are provided as the basic foundation upon which any rural development will be realized. This, in my view, has taken place over a very long period of time, especially, beginning with military rule in 1976 when we had the local government reforms, and where the powers and functions of the traditional institutions, especially in those sections of this country where they played very fundamental roles in governance, was severely eroded, and therefore delegitimizing whatever activities that they carried out, and entrusting such activities in the hands of civil political authorities that we today refer to as local government councils. And in my view, the local government councils have not been able to efficiently and effectively discharge their responsibilities of enhancing rural development in their capacities as government that is nearest to the people at the grassroots level. This is one fundamental area. So if we take the issue of the manner in which successive states at the center have given attention or priority to rural development, we will see that there's a very serious gap, and that has contributed very tremendously in the creation of several ungoverned spaces as we have in Nigeria today, especially in the northern part of this country where, there are series of very thick forests, throughout the region, and therefore uninhabited by the population, giving rise, and sanctuary to these criminals and bandits, take control and continue to terrorize the rest of society. Now, secondly, I think one of the most important things that we need to take into consideration here again has to do with the fact that we keep shouting about the need for restructuring. If we need to get these ungoverned spaces actually covered by administrations in this country, there is a need to restructure the country in such a way that local administration will be placed in the hands of perhaps the states. And that's why I give credence to the national conference that was organized by the former President Goodluck Jonathan, which recommended that there was a need for the abrogation of the third level of government, which is the local government, not abrogation per se, but removing it from the constitution because it's currently not well taken care of by the various provisions. The local government, tier of government, in my view, is not sufficiently empowered by the Constitution to play any fundamental role apart from, the discharge of these residual responsibilities that are being attached to it. The local government councils cannot function without, laws being made by the state houses of assembly, etc., etc. So functionally, the local government councils are not as autonomous as we thought. It's not an issue of financial autonomy, which I've always seen as, the cries by the Nigerian elites to simply democratize corruption by the fact that, the federal government enjoys its relative autonomy as far as its resources are concerned, similarly with the state government, and so the local government council should also have it. I think we need to develop a framework of administration in our respective communities to suit our peculiarities and characteristics. This has been taken away from it. And this is one of the ironies of the Nigerian federal structure. We say we are a federation where you have a center, you have units of the federation, which are the states, and then you also have, you want to design a local government structure that cut across the 36 states of the federation and the federal capital territory. It's impossible under that scenario to be able to have an effective system of administration that will be able to cover, throughout and provide for the local populations whatever their requirements and expectations are. We're in this country, for instance, again, in the middle of the 1980s, when Professor Jibril Aminu, for instance, brought up the idea of nomadic education, and it was severely criticized by a certain segment of the Nigerian elites. It was perceived as if it was a program that was specifically designed to favor a section of the country, and in this case, the Fulani nomads. Because the realization of the fact that these are basically cattle rearers that were not engaged in any particular activities. They hardly will go to school. They are not farmers. They are not traders. And we woke up in the morning and found that these cattle have been rusted. Even if they have not been rusted, the reality of our economic situation has made it impossible for a substantial number of these young Fulani people to have these cattle to rear. And therefore, the alternative or the option that is open to them without Western education, without Islamic education, is to engage in the form of banditry and other criminal activities that we see happening today. And then we keep wondering that the only way we can resolve this problem perhaps is by engaging them through the employment of many security, officials. And, it is very obvious in, the social theory that it's impossible for you to have peace and security in any environment without effective social order in that particular society. So social justice is fundamental. Now, this continues to, rage in this country. And as long as, governments do not take it as a matter of priority to ensure that we come up deliberately with effective policies to ensure that rural areas are developed in such a manner that not just development in terms of the manner in which rural feeder roads are constructed, or, potable water is taken down the rural communities, etc., but ensuring that education cuts across every nook and cranny of this country, and ensuring also that if, for instance, in the 1960s, those of us who grew from the rural areas were able to find basically everything in our primary schools that, were found in the urban centers, I wonder what really has gone wrong today, that you move to substantial portions of our rural areas and you see that technically nothing serious happens, both in our areas of education and even the infrastructure in terms of electricity, potable water, etc., and roads that have been said to be, been put in place by the successive states. So, ungoverned spaces will continue to exist in this country as long as governments do not pay attention, and very serious attention, on the need to provide the enabling environment for the peoples in the rural areas, and especially groups such as the Fulanis, the opportunity to have decent education and also participate in the economic activities within their localities. This, in my view, contributes significantly, and of course also restructure the country in such a manner that you provide enabling framework for every section of the country to come up with a suitable method of rural administration that will be able to perhaps empower the various institutions that we have in place. That is why when colonialism came to Africa, came to Nigeria in particular, it found readily in place in this part of Nigeria the institution of traditional rulers that it used effectively to administer, the largest segment of the Nigerian Federation, which is the northern part of this country, and to some extent in the southwestern part of the country. So we do not have any choice. There is no need insisting that these things have to continue in a manner that it is. It looks more like a unitary configuration than a federal system. We have our various peculiarities. Why is it that it's always, in Kaduna for instance, what we have done in the last 5 years has been to try to restructure the local government administrative system and also to structure the traditional institution by ensuring that they play those roles that they were previously, playing during colonial rule and after independence.
Hello, many thanks, Dr. Kabiru Mato. At least the points have been made there. Let us hear from Dr. Isaiah Osifo. Dr. Isaiah Osifo, you were a chairman of a local government at least 2 times, and of course you headed Algon in Edo State. And if you had been following us, there are suggestions for the, having those traditional rulers back in place. And then there are suggestions of trying to really strengthen the autonomy being given to, local governments. But the fact still remains that today, if you go to a local government, once the chairman is not there, nobody is there. That's just basic. And if he's there, normally the whole activities, revolve around his office. And if he goes out, that's the end of the story and the work stops. Same thing happens when the money is being brought at the end of the month. Maybe it's for a month or for a week or 2, and that's the activity there. And by the end of 1-2 weeks, that ends the story. Now, what's really happening at the local government? Would you say that the autonomy needs to be strengthened, or is not really working? Or how do we get these local governments working? You've been there twice, and you've headed the local government chairman.
Thank you very much. Let us establish a general platform for simple understanding of this concept, whether autonomy or non-autonomy of local government. The platform that I have always recommended is that in developing countries such as Nigeria, and in most developing democracy, the focus of development should be development from below. That is to say, if you are a developing country, you are not emphasizing the grassroots, the foundation of the nation, you're not going to have a sustainable development. And the foundation of any nation is the local government. The people are the grassroots. So, for us to have a sustainable development in Nigeria, we need a strong local government in Nigeria. And now let me quickly say that I listened to the professor about unitary system and federalism. The provisions in the 1999 Constitution as amended are sufficiently defined in terms of realizing the federal nature of the Nigerian state. The Constitution did not impose a structure of the local government on any state. Section 7, Section 1 said, the system of local government shall be by democracy. Therefore, in Kaduna State, your local government should be democracy. It is not an imposition, it is a right of the people at the grassroots to elect those who should be their council, but you can decide on how to conduct your election. Different from what is going to be done in Edo or in Lagos or in Bauchi. But the problem we have, how many state governments in Nigeria have been able to conduct a free and fair election? They have state electoral commission in the constitution. They do selections, they do not do election. There are some states for 8 years, they have a caretaker. And if you're talking of development, you're talking of security. Where there's an alienation of government from the people, how are you going to have development when you select unwanted persons to be administrators at the local level? How are you going to cultivate the goodwill, the input of the people towards that development that will bring about prosperity and security of the locality? So if you are talking about security problem in the locality, the first problem is that you are imposing on them those that are not even wanted. If the people elect their councillors, they elect their chairman in the local government, and they know that they gave them the mandate to govern that particular area, I believe sure there will be a moral support for that system of government. So the constitutional provision in section 771, 73, section 83 are enough for the state government to exploit to have this type of local government that they want to have. So nobody is imposing any structure of local government on any state. But there's an abuse of the system by governors in Nigeria. They abuse the local government system. They prove that they know more than the local government. But this is not true, because many local government chairmen are better equipped administratively than even more than some governors in Nigeria. But they abuse the system. They don't allow election. They don't allow them to perform. They usurp their resources. They usurp their power. And they become to cast blame on the local government. So until we realize that we need to implement, if we are asking for restructuring, we should first implement the provisions of the constitution that we have at hand. That makes us responsible citizens of Nigeria. If you don't implement what you have now, how are you going to implement the one that they're going to give to you when they restructure? Why can't governors conduct election? Why can't governors have a system of democracy that will harness and cultivate the people and give support to development and security in their local areas? So 3 basic categories are: 1, constitutional provisions as we have it today in Nigeria, they are enough to provide a suitable and effective local government system if the governors will obey the provisions of the Constitution of Nigeria. The functions of local government, as explicitly stated in the 1st schedule of the Constitution, the local government is a partner of the other 2 tiers of government. What the local government should do are listed in 4th schedule of the Nigerian Constitution. So if we obey the Constitution, we'll be getting close to having an effective local government system. Secondly, resources. I hear about, somebody mentioned about 1976 local government reform. It will be ironical, and maybe it will interest people to know that in terms of resources for the local government, the military have done better than the civil administration. The 1976 local government reform was made to ensure in realizing, Obasanjo Yar'Adua knew the effectiveness of a strong local government system. Then we're not even talking about autonomy now. We're talking about a strong local government system that will be there for everybody. That was the focus and the essence of 1976 local government reform. It was good. The local government were functioning. The federal military government was supporting in terms of resources to this level of government. And things were good in the local government level. Even Babangida local government reform. Look at all the reforms of Babangida. Babangida brought about democracy into the local government, where you don't have councillors different from supervisors. Babangida reform, Dasuki Commission and committee report was so suitable for all the 774 local government areas in Nigeria. Then even the Sani Abacha that people criticize for whatever reason had a better relationship with the local government than the present civil democracy that we have. So when you, in 1999 date, which is over 20 years, we are still operating the old revenue allocation formula. You give federal government 52% of the revenue, you give 36 states 26%, and you give 774 local government 80% of the revenue. Now, if you give them that pittance that is just even enough to His Excellency, the former deputy governor, he mentioned a point. The resources that you give to the local government cannot even pay salaries of teachers. It is deducted as source. As the money is coming from Abuja, it is removed as source to pay private schools. Some don't even have 1 naira left in their account from the federation account resources that are sent to them. And you employ these teachers, the local government is not responsible for the employment of these teachers. They are not responsible for their transfer or discipline, but they pay their salaries. So when you employ them, you give them that body, you take 101% of their resources from Abuja, from a federal account, to pay just one sector of the local community, which is primary school teacher. Of course, primary education is very, very important. Why have federal and state government not addressed that problem? The state government keep quiet. They watch local government growing under this burden of pay primary school teachers. They don't give them 1% support to pay primary school teachers. But they take all the glory that they are responsible for primary education in the state. No state in Nigeria is paying primary school, including all the 36 states of Nigeria. So when you don't pay these teachers, and you know your local government, as a commissioner for local government, as former commissioner professor, and you know aware that there are some local government Kaduna State that don't have 1 naira left after they got in their federation account, how do you not expect such a local government to function? Third, intergovernmental relationship. intergovernmental relationship. The federal government isolates itself from its local government, the state government isolates itself from the local government, and the local government is struggling at the grassroots level. In our time, in 1999, in this country, it is on record, AGON, which is all local governments in Nigeria, 734, we paid the consequences to the former governor of Kaduna, Elijah McAfee, and we had discussion with him. We told him about the importance of local governments in Nigeria, that even governors will not be performing if the local governments are not performing. In our time, AGON in Nigeria purchased 1,000 Prado Jeep, brand new Prado Jeep, that was given to the Nigerian police. Yes, police is the responsibility of federal government, but we knew as a responsible system that these activities are in our domain. Criminality, banditry, kidnapping, robbery, they don't happen at the sky, they happen at the grassroots. The common man and the woman at the grassroots, and the people suffering it. We purchased these vehicles and gave to the Nigerian police. Now, since that 1990 date, how many state governments have called the local government to say, let us partner together to purchase some communication gadget, some equipment that will assist the Nigerian police. Now, all these crimes that are happening, they are happening in a local government area. There is no crime that is happening in Nigeria that is not in a particular local government area. What is the relationship between the governors of these states and the local government chairman in that particular area? Are they funding them? The governors are clamoring for state police. They have not been able to organize local vigilante that will work with the local government chairman, so you can have locality that is mining this territory. There is no forest in Nigeria. There is no...
Dr. Isaiah Sifu, sorry, we've jumped in now. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. I just want to bring in again Dr. Chris Akumas, the former Deputy Governor of Abia State. Part of what has been said in terms of developing the rural communities, because when we talk about local government, of course, we do know that there are urban areas in Nigeria that are full local governments. I mean, you go to a place like Lagos, for instance, there are urban areas that are local governments here in Abuja and indeed elsewhere in the country. I was just wondering, is there something that we have also not been able to do organically? Because sometimes it appears that we are throwing money at problems in the perhaps uncoordinated manner. I want to cite some examples so you can take it from there. Development partners, when they want to deploy their aid, you find that they say, okay, fine, they are going to electrify or provide pipe-borne water, not pipe-borne water, maybe rural electrification or standalone hand pumps for water in rural communities. That's where they normally focus. The federal government also has the Rural Electrification Agency. That's part of its mandate. Then you also have the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. And so you're asking yourself, why is all of this happening? What is the input from the states? And of course, what is the input also from the local governments? You can be sure that all of these agencies or efforts I've mentioned have huge budgetary allocations. But the outcomes such as we are seeing and we are talking about will seem to point to the fact that governance and authority have broken down in rural communities.
Thank you, Councillor. Let me start by saying that we have quite a number of problems. One of our problems has to do with human capital planning. When you don't plan, so you are not focused and you don't know what you want to develop. And so when you don't develop your human capital properly, what Professor Mato and Dr. Isaiah said has to do, we have our areas of strength. In the past, I remember that even in my community, when they see a brilliant child and the parents hasn't got money to train that child and they see the potential, they will organize palm harvest. They will harvest palm, fruit, get the money and collectively train that child. for obvious reason. They believe that this child will be an asset for the community as time goes on. They see the prospect. And so they did that. Some of our elders that went abroad were actually sponsored by their communities and local government before we come into the state level. What am I trying to say here? We have stopped planning for what and how to capture the strengths that will govern and develop our local communities. The local governments, the rural areas, we had what we called needs, this, that, beautiful documents prepared. But as we went on, you talked about development partners. Where do they get? How did they go about their need assessment? Who recommended that these particular programs or projects are the ones that are very important and germane and that will help those communities? There was a governor in this country that every budget year, he will ask the communities using the development associations or unions to submit what was most important for them for that year. Amongst that, they will sit down and then look at the ones they can implement for the year. So you have the bottom-up approach where people actually are involved in what is needed to govern the place, to improve the place, to increase situations. Today, we talk of agriculture. I don't hear much about extension agents in our rural areas. Here we are, fighting pandemic of all times. We don't see much of our health officials, rural health, which we used to see. As a child, there were days that even when going to school, your mother will say, make sure you have cleaned, you have swept all these places, because the inspectors will come. They want to make sure that sanitation at that village level. We are not even doing it in town. All we do is once in a while we say, today is environmental sanitation, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. People will come, push some things out of the gutters, and then you see the tippers and contractors running around and still push those things back into the... We must face realities. We talk about social amenities. What you are providing, of what benefit? How well would it help the people? Are they really happy with it? Would they, for that provision, feel the need to sacrifice something? So, Kingsley, there are so many things.
So many, really.
And I think we just have to go back to the basis. And that is the only way. Otherwise, today we are talking of ungoverned spaces. If we don't plug these holes, we'll be talking of ungoverned areas. And that will not be good for us. I'm happy that Dr. Kabir is here talking about security and all that. How many? We have divisional police offices, stations all over the country. How many of them even have functional vehicles? How many of them have functional communication network? You call on a security group officially to come to attend to an issue. Something is happening. 3 hours they are not there. You keep calling and they tell you, we are coming, we are coming. We are coming and things continues to happen. So there are so many things that we have to do. I am happy that some state governments are taking the bull by the horn, organizing homeland security, neighborhood, and all that. But like I said in one of the programs, it's confusing. You have so many layers. They are not very clear. They are not well cut out. And then security has gone beyond clubs and machetes.
Right.
If you have to fight to keep the place, proper. So we just have to really get our acts right, go back to the basics, reorganize ourselves, and then, yes, funding is key. What goes to the various tiers of government is key, but I keep emphasizing prioritization is critical for us to move forward.
Okay, many thanks, Dr. Chris. We're running short of time. Dr. Kabir, Kabir Adamu, let's hear you talk to us about this issue finally. We've been doing so many things wrongly in this country, and that's admissible by everybody else. And the essence of maybe this kind of discussion and some other things is to get things right. On your final note, what do you think should be done to govern the ungoverned spaces in this country?
Two basic issues that I would like to prioritize. One of them is our policy priorities. I was amazed when interacting with an official of the National Planning Commission to find out that those priorities were actually in sync with our aspirations. Everything we've discussed here, there are priorities designated by the National Planning Commission. And I mean, it's significant. Time will not allow us to go into the details, but you talked about our development partners. Then the ministries, departments, and agencies, all of them key into this national policy priorities, well designated with the intention of taking us to where we want to do. We know where we want to go. Let's not be deceived about that. Everyone, every government official, every Nigerian that is worthy of his standing know where we want to go. And those things have been prioritized. The challenge has always been compliance. How do you ensure, for instance, that we key into those priorities? When you submit a budget, National Planning Commission, as an example, that is have an oversight into that. How does it key into that? Then, more importantly, the oversight function by the legislature to ensure that even where there are deviations by the executive arm of government, how do they come back? And then, lastly, which is for me the most important point, monitoring and evaluation. You can have beautiful policies and plans. Monitoring and evaluation. How do you correct those plans so that you remain focused? I think that's the way to go. If we're able to look at these two key areas, compliance, priority compliance, and then the monitoring and evaluation component, I think we would reduce this significantly.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Kabir Adamu. We're talking about the challenge of implementation. We have plans, we have programs, but to faithfully implement those ones will always be a challenge. Of course, this is a very significant topic, and it's something that we'll have to return to at some point. There are still a number of issues to deal with. I was just wondering, some bizarre thought occurred to me. Let me just share it. We're talking about ungoverned spaces, and we say they are in the forest. Now, assuming they were not using those ungoverned spaces as a sanctuary for kidnapping, for banditry, for robbery, and so on and so forth, and they decided to start setting fires to those forests, what would be our reaction?
Climate change.
I'm just wondering, Professor Kabir, they just start setting fires. We're talking about climate change, we're talking about securing our agricultural lands, and these guys, if they become so ruthless and reckless, nihilistic, you just say, okay, nothing for us to gain, set fires to this area. So that's the point that we wish to, yes.
There's something we may be forgetting.
Very briefly, 5 seconds.
Okay. These ungoverned spaces have been there. These forests, these areas have been there. But activities were on. People engaged in meaningful and profitable activities in those areas. Why can't our people engage now in those areas? That is key. And that is what
Dr. Chris Akobas, former Deputy Governor of Abia State, a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria. We appreciate you for being with us this morning. Dr. Kabir Adamu, Security Risk Management Expert, Thank you very much. One matter you take home, you see, communal clashes occur in Nigeria over land. Now criminal elements have taken over the land and the communities are helpless. So you go and consider that and then you see how you deal with that. Professor Kabir Mato, of course you had one shot, but a very long shot today. Of course we'll have the light in getting you back on Good Morning Nigeria. Kabir Mato from Kabir Mato, what you have on the screen is still Kabir Adamu, by the way. Professor Kabir Mato, thank you very much for being with us from Kaduna Network Center. From Benin, we're joined by Dr. Isaiah Osifo, two-term chairman of Uhuode local government area in Edo State. We appreciate your insight into this conversation. And for those who sent in their tweets, deep thanks as well. Good Morning Nigeria is back tomorrow, same time, 7 in the morning. Until then, stay safe and be well. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
I'm Yusuf Ndabu Suman saying thank you for being part of this. Stay safe.